What's up, everybody? Welcome to Who's Your Rabbi? My name is Jaime, and today we're gonna continue our little exposition on part of the Sermon on the Mount and or the drosh from the Har, as you would say. Um, Torah from the top, as Dr. Jeffrey Seif would say. Um, and we're gonna focus on something that we already kind of covered in the previous lesson with the subject of light. Okay, um, so the previous lesson was basically covering Matthew verses 14 through 16. Today we're going to pretty much stick to verse 14, and in particular verse 14, part B, you could say. So the second part of the actual verse. And we're going to expound on some stuff that we already discussed, and in particular, um, the city of Jerusalem. Okay, so in verse 14, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city a city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Okay, so we're gonna stop there. We're gonna expand on, like I said, in the previous lesson when Jesus is talking about this. Um, in essence, in the backdrop, you have Jerusalem, and so there's a visual to what goes on, and it gives the rest of the actual verses in this section uh, a little bit more clarity. Because if you just listen to it uh, just like that, then it doesn't completely add up, because you're talking about light in most of it, but you throw in this verse about a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Okay, but listen to the previous explanation. As far as the details, today we're going to just focus on the importance of the city, um, and you know, give you a little bit more of a historical, less of a biblical background. We are going to throw some verses in there because it is essential to the Judeo-Christian faiths. Um, so, in both um, faiths, it is the central uh, place of importance for a lot of reasons. Um, Eventually, Christianity would um, tend to kind of minimize the importance of it. Um, but even if you study early church history, you'll see that the city was uh, one of the main uh, places that they had in what they called the uh, I believe it's the tetrarchy. And so they had a structure, and these cities were cities of importance to Christianity, per se. Um, we're talking more about the Judeo um, Christian connection, messianic um, expectations, and everything that it has to do with that, and more of the Jewish background in particular. But not to say that it wasn't didn't play a key role, and you see that um, in the Book of Acts, and you're going to see that in the numbers that I'm going to throw out there right now. So basically, uh, the city of Jerusalem is approximately a little bit over 3,000 years old, as an actual uh, city per se. Uh, but it actually has a further history than that. And in biblical history, you could say, um, before it shows up as the city of David, as Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. Um, there seems to be at least one reference in the Torah, and that's in Genesis 14, verse 17 and 18. Right, and it says this is talking about Melchizedek, and I spoke a little bit about Melchizedek in a previous teaching, and so Melchizedek is basically a title of one of the kings, but it says that he's the king of Salem or Salem or Shalem, right? And then in verse 17 it says, "Now after he returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh." This is the king's valley. Verse 18, "Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of El Elyon." Right? So we see this character, Melchizedek, show up, and it says that he's the king of Salem and that he's a priest of El Elyon, or God Most High. Right? And so in context, this is after Abraham um, goes and fights a battle against a couple of kings who've held some of his men captive, and he comes back a victor, and then this character shows up, and then if you keep reading a little bit further, it says that Abraham offered him a tenth of the spoils, basically. So that's where you get the basis for tithing, the tenth. Anyways, the next time, so that's the only occasion in the Torah that you're actually going to find the city of Jerusalem, right? The rest of the mentions are outside of the Torah. There is no command to pray to Jerusalem in the Torah because Jerusalem was technically not a a place, or at least not a place under the control and or under the management or administration of the Israelites. Okay, so in the book of Psalms, it also makes a mention to Salem, and that's in Psalm 73. I'm sorry, 76, verse 3, and it says, "In Salem is his sukkah, and his dwelling place in Zion." Right. So a sukkah is basically like a tent or a tabernacle, a place of dwelling, um, and so that's what the festival of Sukkot has to do with, in part. And it says, "But in Salem is his sukkah, and his dwelling place is in Zion," um, because Jerusalem over time took um, more and more importance in the life of Israel and Judah, and so you'll see that little by little it starts to become more and more uh, mentioned and more important in even the everyday ritual and practice of everything, to the extent that eventually um, David builds the city of Jerusalem after basically taking it from the Jebusites. And then after the fact, Solomon, who takes over as king after David, uh, ends up building the first temple there, which is uh, uh, an example, or not an example, but an expansion of the tabernacle, and on a grander scale, you could say, and but also in a steady place, and then you start to build those those things and those customs and traditions that follow it, right? And then the next time around is in the book of Hebrews, also when it discusses uh, Melchizedek or Melchizedek, um, and it kind of reiterates what the Genesis story says also. But like I said, so if you were to look up Jerusalem, just in the Torah alone, you won't find it unless you look for Salem or Salem, right? And we'll get into a little bit more of the meaning of the word just a little bit further down the line. But in the Nevi'im, um, you find it a total of well, actually in the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, so the Nach, which is the acronym for everything besides the Torah, or Tanakh, it would be including the Torah. So what is referred to as the Old Testament or Older Testament. It shows up a total of 648 times. So you see that it's highly important. The first time around that it shows up is right at the beginning of the Nevi'im. In the book of Joshua, it shows up 8 times. The book of Judges shows up 4 times. It's kind of amazing that it only shows up 4 times because it has to do with leadership. But it wasn't the city of David, the David built. So you know, it still didn't take up that level of importance. In First Samuel 1 time, in Second Samuel, which actually 32 times. I'm sorry. Then we have First Kings 28 times, Second Kings 56 times. So you start to see the importance because this is after or during the time of Solomon and after Solomon. So the kings are reigning from. Then you have Isaiah with 50 times, Jeremiah a whopping 100 times, Ezekiel 29 times, Joel 6 times, Amos 2 times, Obadiah 2 times, Micah 8 times, Zephaniah 5 times, Zechariah 39 times. This is key right here because Zechariah is one of the um, higher influencing prophets when it comes to messianic prophecy. And then Malachi 2 times. Now in the Ketuvim, Book of Psalms 20 times, and Songs of Songs 8 times, Lamentations 9 times, and that's actually key to understanding the some of the connections that Jesus has with the city of Jerusalem. We'll discuss that further at a later time. But just know Lamentations is one of the books to reference. And then in Ecclesiastes 5 times, the book of Esther 1 time, Daniel 9 times, and in Daniel, like I said, this is where you will basically get the tradition um, that leads to the prayer uh, facing towards Jerusalem if you're outside of Jerusalem. Because it says that Daniel prayed towards Jerusalem. And so a lot of the customs end up taking shape from that. Um, Ezra and Nehemiah, Ezra 44 times, Nehemiah 35 times. These are key rebuilders, basically starting the Second Temple period. So that's a key factor there. First and Second Chronicles, 145 times, 25 in First Chronicles, 120 times. So by far it takes a lead. Actually beats Jeremiah now in Second Chronicles. Now we go to the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, and The Gospels, well, in total, 144 times in the New Testament. Uh, Coincidence? Maybe not. 144, 12 divided by 12. 12 times 12 equals 144, and that number is key for a lot of reasons. But Matthew 12 times, Mark 11 times, Luke 32 times, John 13 times, and then Luke again with in the book of Acts with the 60 times. So in total, 92 times referenced by Luke. Excuse me. Paul in his writings, Romans 4 times, First Corinthians 2 times, Galatians 5 times, the book of Hebrews 1 time, and the book of Revelation 4 times, and primarily a reference to the New Jerusalem. So the Jerusalem to come, and this plays a key role in the actual Hebrew name of Jerusalem, which is Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is plural. So there's an understanding that there's a duality, but also in Second Temple Judaism, rabbinic literature, obviously early Nazarene Messianic / Christian literature. It is a key factor. It plays a role in God's overall plan. Excuse me. So, like I said, the city it is as an establishment has been, you know, at least around for about a little bit over 3,000 years. Just recently, I believe they celebrated the anniversary for that not too long ago. But actually, as a settlement, it actually even has a little bit more of a time span. So about another 2,000 years, basically uh, between 3,000 and 2,800 of before the Common Era or BC, and then in more modern times, the present old city walls were built in 1541. East-West Jerusalem division took place in 1948 after the establishment of the nation of Israel, or Eretz Yisrael, Medina Israel, the state of Israel, and then the Israeli annexation of East Jerusalem took place in 1967 after the 1967 war. Um, and then there's a Jerusalem law that took place in 1980. Excuse me. Um, so the people of Jerusalem are known as, and this is in modern times, Jerusalemites. In Hebrew, it's Yerushalmi, and in Arabic, Kutsi or Makdisi. Right? And we have to remember that in modern times, Israel is a democracy, and it's primarily composed of uh, Jewish and Arabic um, Palestinian folk that occupy the city and the area there. Okay, so like I said, we were expanding a little bit on what the meaning of the name is, and according to some sources, the etymology of the name for Jerusalem is variously etymologized to mean foundation, from Semitic yuri, to found or to lay a cornerstone. Um, in essence, to the deity Shalem, right? And the deity Shalem was thus the original deity of the Bronze Age uh, in the city. Um, Shalim or Shalem was the name of the god of dusk in Canaanite religion, um, whose name is based on the same root, which is transliterated or Latinized as SLM, from which the Hebrew word for peace, shalom, and its Arabic equivalent, salam, come from. Right? The name thus offers itself such as the city of peace, abode of peace, dwelling of peace, founded in safety, and in some Christian literature, um, it doesn't really relate with the actual meaning of the composite words, but vision of peace. You might find some references to um, in latter Christian writings. Okay. Uh, like I said, the ending of it, Ayin, um, indicates plurality or dualism, um, and so um, in a more topographical perspective, it kind of points to the fact that the city was initially founded or sat on two hills. Right? Um, there's multiple ancient sources. There's ancient Egyptian sources that make a reference to what could be perceived as the actual city or the area of Jerusalem. Excuse me. And then in uh, the Hebrew Bible or the Tanakh, the Old Testament, um, and in other Jewish sources, um, the form Yerushalayim or Yerushalayim first appears in the Bible in the book of Joshua. Right? And according to rabbinic literature in Midrash, the name is a combination of two names united by God. So Yireh, the abiding place, and the name given by Abraham, uh, where he was supposed to sacrifice Isaac, and then the word Shalem, the place of peace. Um, and then that was given by the high priest Shem. Right? So the oldest written mention of Jerusalem, um, one of the earliest extra biblical Hebrew writings of the word Jerusalem, or is dated to the 6th or 7th century of before the Common Era or BC, and it was discovered in Kirbebeit Leh near Beit Gevrim in 1961, and it reads something along the lines of, "I am Yahweh, your God, and I will accept the cities of Judah, and I will redeem Jerusalem." So, there's multiple sources. There's extra biblical sources, some secular sources, uh, and then in Arabic, the name is Al Quds, uh, which is basically transliterated as translated as the holy or the holy sanctuary, um, which would have like the equivalence of Hakadesh, which is the holy, right? And so this is just some historical background, some stats, but as I mentioned in the previous teaching, when Jesus was talking um, and said that verse or part of the verse where, a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Um, he was, in essence, talking about Jerusalem, and the crowd that was there would have visualized um, something because it was in the backdrop to the fact that I'm not the fact, but when Jesus was speaking, and so it would have made an impact on them. Excuse me. Another interesting point or fact is that you know the temple was built by Shlomo, right? Solomon, and his name has to do with the word peace. So in essence, you have the King of Peace, Melech Shlomo, right? And he reigns from the capital, which is the dwelling place of peace or the city of peace, Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, I'm sorry. So these are just some interesting stats that you should consider when you're reading the Bible, and when it makes mention to um, the city of Jerusalem in particular, because it'll change some of the viewpoint that you might have um, once you bring this into the reading of the text. So you're reading the text, and now you know that in context, in actual you know hi- historical perspective, when this was going on, um, the the person speaking had, or the person writing had, Jerusalem in mind, um, because of its key importance from many perspectives. It was the capital of the United Kingdom of Israel, and then of the separated southern kingdom of Judah. Um, and it was the capital that David reigned from for 33 years out of his 40 years. So he reigned the first 7 years from Hebron, and then transferred over to Jerusalem and reigned for another 33 years, um, which is another interesting fact that you know uh, Jesus basically uh, lived and then eventually spent his last days in Jerusalem, but he lived for approximately 33 and a half years, no more than 34 years. Um, and then um, if we look at the second coming, um, there's a 7 year period before the full establishment of the kingdom comes about during his second coming. So, and that's where the book of Revelation would come into play, and the teachings that have to do with Jerusalem and the duality of it, and so on and so forth. So, hope that was interesting. Hope that helps you a little bit more to understanding the Bible when you're reading, how to bring some of this geography into play. Like I said, Jerusalem was the central point for the early community, We see the in the book of Acts. We see just the in number of references that Luke makes in both his writings, but throughout just the whole scriptures. And in particular, when we talk about the book of Acts in Acts 15, when Paul, Barnabas, and the rest of the apostles meet in Jerusalem to discuss matters that would affect all of us to this day. And so, if you're coming from a messianic or a Christian uh, perspective, but from the Jewish perspective, it it is the capital, has been the capital. They never saw it any differently, regardless of what took place. Um, one other thing that did take place after the dispersion uh, of the southern kingdom, or of the people of Judea, by the Romans in 135, was that the city was renamed by the emperor to Aelia Capitolina. This lasted for a short time span. This is where you get the introduction of the term uh, Palestine, um, because it was basically a way of them um, insulting the Jewish people, and by not uh, recognizing some of these things. There are several historical uh, writings that attest to this. Um, but if you really want proof, all you have to do is go to Rome. Emperor Titus built an ark that is still there to this day, and has depictions of the sacking of the temple. So all those people that want to rewrite history and dispute it and say otherwise, um, have an issue, because what are you going to do with that? How are you going to explain what history says, what a lot of people throughout history have stated, um, not just the Jewish people, um, but secular peoples, other people groups, um, and so I don't want to get too much into the political aspect of it, um, because today there's a lot of issues. Uh, the city, the old city, is divided into four quarters, um, but the quarters are, first of all, not even, and then three of the four quarters make sense to an extent. Okay, so if you're going to divide the city, divide it into the people groups that have a claim as far as it being from a religious perspective, the importance to their faith. Excuse me. So you have the Arabic quarter, you have the Christian quarter, you have the Jewish quarter, and for some reason you have an Armenian quarter. Now, you know, the Armenian people have been, part of the faith for a long time, but they are technically uh, another Christian group for the most part. And so, why they have their own quarter, I don't understand. Like I said, there's politics. I have nothing against the Armenian people. They are great people, and they have, you know, lovely customs, awesome food. um, but when it comes to why they decided that, um, uh, there's no explanation that would really justify it. But that's modern times, modern politics. Like I said, I don't want to get too caught up with that. Just those are just some things to think about, consider um, when analyzing. Hopefully, at some point, we all get to see the city of Jerusalem um, in our lifetimes, and then in the afterlife. But those are just some of the key points that affect the the faith, um, and the importance of the city to those faiths. Like I said in the previous teaching, I gave a little bit more explanation of as far as what relevance it has to Islam. So listen to that, and you know, one of the customs that I borrowed from a couple other ministries um, was to um, at the end quote from Psalm 122, I believe it's verse 6, which says, Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Um, and if you keep reading, it says, they shall prosper that love thee. Um, you know, so Levitt Ministries is the one that I got it from, but eventually uh, Jewish Voice, which is Rabbi Jonathan Bernis's ministry, um, also has uh, a tendency to use this. And so um, from a personal perspective, I think it is an important element to the faith. So that's part of the reason I borrowed that. And so, you know, let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and include it in our thoughts and in our faith aspect, um, and acknowledging the role that it's going to play um, in the future and in the afterlife for those who uh, believe in the afterlife and follow the teachings of Mashiach, Yeshua. So um, I think I said all that I had an intention of saying. So once again, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe to the channel, listen to Who's Your Rabbi, to some of the other stuff that we're posting on there. And give us a like. um, I am working on trying to uh, make some of the material available. um, as you know, I do this you know for the love of the game. I have a regular job uh, that in these times doesn't necessarily you know pay for anything outside of the bills. um, so consideration probably putting some of the material out there, making it available for donation. We'll get to that point when we get to that point, but also offering some courses, um, like some of these like the Act series, for example, and some of the other courses, like, and then possibly even doing uh, like some certification training. So that's in the work. um, and I'll keep you posted on that thing. But Other than that, we're just going to continue with our Act series. We're going to continue to do a couple of other things. I think I'm just going to keep going um, with the Sermon on the Mount, breaking it down by the sections. So expect to see something um, on the next set of verses. Um, the first, I believe it's the first 12 verses, which covers the Beatitudes, might take a little bit longer time. So um, I'll go back and do that. But there is some stuff to be discussed when it comes to that. Excuse me. So um, I guess that's it. So until next time, Shalom and Ahava.